What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Nooners of Fire and Blood. Today is a special day. Chapter 11, The Long Reign. Jaehaerys and Alysanne, all them babies, all them dragons. Today we have a special panel. It's always special, but as always, AU will, he'll curse me out. No, he doesn't do that. Ladies first. Mackenzie L. Burns, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Today, actually, the cold spell has broken. It's like warm enough where the snow is melting, but we're supposed to get more snow like in 2 days from now, which I'm just like, God damn it. But I'm excited to talk about this chapter. It's a really good one. It's a long one. Like you said, there's a lot of babies in this chapter and a lot of death as well. But I'm excited to talk about it, and I'm thankful to be here again today.
Yeah, it really is. It's just a great chapter. We'll talk about it in a few minutes. Uh, to one of the very first people, actually the first person to ever have me on a live stream, and I I did horrible, guys. But hey, you Packmule, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. It's a real pleasure. It's been the most exciting thing to see you grow as a YouTuber. And I'm really excited that you and Mackenzie have partnered up and are really doing a great job in carrying on the live stream Game of Thrones wave, because the momentum is there and the long night is almost over. So you've done a lot in regards to getting us through that. And it's always a pleasure to be with you, man. It's a lot of fun.
Wow, man, the honor is all mine. Uh, that wealth of knowledge in that brain, I want it. Thank you so much. But don't forget to like, share, subscribe, especially to the people on my panel. Do with me what you will. First off, it's a special occasion because my friend, my fellow Cylon Jill, and my sub sent me something in the mail. So let's see what we got here. And it's a big box, so you're going to get a lot of ear rape here. Y'all ready? Not prepared. So there you go. There's the box. Not good at this. Don't do unboxing videos. Where's BBM when you need him? Ha. I think Bobby went a little crazy with the tape. How's everyone doing in the chat, by the way? What's up, Terry T, Bubba Husky? Let me throw that over to the side.
Bobby says that she misses snow.
Jon Snow?
No, just snow in general. But she can probably clarify.
What's up, Reese and Katrin? If I said that right or wrong, let me know. Yell at me in the chat. All caps.
Bobby also says, don't drop it, with a bunch of exclamation points.
Yeah, it says fraggly on it. Whatever that means. It really is taped up good here. I feel like I don't know how to open a box anymore. First off, Bobby, you shouldn't have sent me anything. But then when you do, you gotta do me dirty, right? Of course, I do tease you all the time on the Cylon John, so it's fair. I mean, it's literally like a combination lock. I'm trying to break into a safe here. Hold on.
It's I guess
I never seen so much tape.
I guess Bobby wants to, use the Cylon. With the Cylon.
Here. Y'all like the sound of that? I don't.
Oh, there you
go. It's fraggly, from what I hear.
Fraggly. People want to know what's in the box.
All right, so first off, it's a fishing net in there, so I can catch some minnows.
What?
You might be a redneck if you catch minnows on your own. No, it's just some package.
Oh. Uh-oh. No.
What did you send me, Bobby?
Uh-oh.
What is this? Okay, so it's more than one thing, I think. But
I'm waiting to see what she...
oh my gosh. Look at that.
Is it
That's by Bobby. Hold on. That's everything.
I'm waiting to see what Bobby says.
So it's a handmade box. Very nice. I don't know if you can see it that well. My lighting sucks. And it's even got a bow. I can't flip it over. Hold on. Hey D, how are you doing? Fraggle Rock, Bubba.
All Bobby says is he.
How many knots did you tie in this, Bobby? Also, did everybody read Fire and Blood this week? I'm sure you did. I know everybody does their homework because people love homework, right?
Especially as adults.
Did you at least listen to it on audiobook? I sure did. I didn't read anything. I'm unprepared.
This is why.
I always am. I got the book right here. I'm just going to read it to you guys, honestly.
Story time.
Okay, so I don't know if there's anything in here, so I'm still going to be fraggly with it. Now I don't know how to open it because I'm horrible at this. There we go. A little bit of ASMR. Good job. Box with stuff in it. How much stuff did you send me, Bobby? Holy smokes.
Johnny, what's in the box? What's in the box, Johnny? Don't you like the way it feels?
Well done.
It's really awesome.
I'd have to say, I'm going to have to put ASMR special on this now.
It's like really cool when they put the packing in that way. It's all tight.
Okay, so
The crinkle paper.
there's so many things in here from Bobby. We have another box, which I fear may have more stuff in it.
Oh no.
Bobby went crazy. Why did you did so much? Oh my gosh. See, now we're going to have an infomercial just about Bobby's stuff.
Bubba says
the best thing.
Bubba says that box was a box of straw.
It was. Hay for my horses. Oh my gosh. It's wildfire.
What?
I got a bottle of pig shit. So, I don't know how to keep it going with doing this. So, how's everyone doing out there tonight? You want to hear bubble wrap? Hey, you. I have to ask you a question real quick while I'm getting some of this stuff opened up.
I love when I get pig shit in the mail.
No, I know. It smells so good. I
like when I put it on my face. Moisturizes.
What do you think about Jaehaerys and whether or not his story was embellished a little bit? Jaehaerys and Alysanne. What do you think about that?
I think the whole book is intentionally embellished, and I think that bottle is absolutely wonderful looking.
Oh my gosh, this is so fantastic. I don't know if y'all can see it. But
no, I think George's writing POV style is one of those things that you just can't get from another author. I mean, you really have to read his stuff in order to get what he's trying to say. I can read, like, for example, Sue Grafton is one of my murder mystery authors that I go to a lot. Rest in peace. But you always know the character that she's writing from, is the investigator, so you know that's the point of view you're going to get. With George, it's always different, so you constantly have to change. And when, like, for example, when he's discussing Mushroom, you know he's slanted. He's like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but this is what he said. And you know it's just a big push on an anti-mushroom conversation. Same with Jaehaerys and Alysanne. It's just like they couldn't do anything wrong. Um, I don't know how else to describe it. It's kind of like an Italian mom with her son. They don't do anything wrong. They will defend them to the death, and that's the way I took it.
Yeah, we see a little bit of that with Sarah Targaryen in this. A little bit of blind loyalty to your. I mean, that happens with parents, and I mean, at some point, most parents have their breaking point, but it seems in that case, yeah, it didn't happen. I have to say, I'm stunned by these gifts because I just received Milk of the Poppy. I will be back. Um, I gotta go take a dose and go to sleep real quick. Oh my gosh, Bobby, what have you done here? Is there a glamour in here? Can I look like Melisandre if I want? Because that would be awesome. Love you, Bobby. What's up, Night Shame? Thank you so much for stopping by, my friend.
They were all talking about to not drop your wildfire.
I know, right? So I'm gonna try to. There's so much stuff in here. I'll try to work it in between. Oh my goodness, Bobby, you shouldn't have. Oh, I love you, Bobby. Yeah. So, I'll try to kind of get into the book a little bit. We can start with Alyssa Farman or Alice Westhill, and Eustace Hightower returns to Old Town. Donnell's son, I think, or grandson, I can't remember. I think it's Donnell the Delayer's son. Anyways, he comes back. He's hardly recognizable. Looks like he's aged 20 years, sunburnt, and there are a bunch of Summer Islanders with him. Uh, they thought he was successful in bringing stuff back. I mean, he kind of was, but 12 days in, they get the storms. Krakens are mentioned. They find these small jet of islands, get lost, kind of end up on Sotoros. The Summer Islanders help them, and then all this stuff comes back. What did you think about that, Kenzie? And also, later on, Corlys Velaryon, the sea snake, mentions that he saw the Sun Chaser, which is Alice Westhill's ship, in Asshai, ported in Asshai, many years later. What are your thoughts on that?
It's kind of more or less very cool that they had implemented that element of the story. How they kind of just they brought a character back into the story, because there's not really any necessary opposing really figures almost in this. There's no like people that yet Jaehaerys has kind of and Alysanne have to face, because most of these people are not oppressed isn't the right word, but they're under the rule of Jaehaerys and Alysanne. So to have someone from Essos come over and just be like, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, is like kind of an element that the story, I think, at this time needed. And yeah, the fact that the last time they saw him, he was like much younger, and then when he shows back up, it's like ages so much, sunburning. Well, sun damage can, as we know, cause a lot of damage and age you much faster. So it's kind of not surprising, because Essos is basically sunshine all the time, compared to like a lot of Westeros. That's kind of funny. But yes, the whole porting of the ship in later on in this chapter is very suspicious, because at this point still we're trying to figure out like how that can influence the chapters later on. And because we have to remember too, this is only part 1 of 2 sections of Fire and Blood. So something may happen where we may not get it in the rest of the book, but like in part 2 of what that the docking of that ship means for later characters and later storylines. Like you were talking about pre-stream as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think we should.
At you for a second.
I think we should
Oh.
read Bubba Husky a night story. He's trying to fall asleep.
Sleep well, Bubba. Have
Yeah.
a good one, Bubba.
Have a good night.
Yeah. Sleep
Don't
well.
dream about me at all. Not one bit.
Go
Don't
listen
think
to
about. Don't think about AU Packmule. Whatever you do,
think
don't
about
let it
me.
come into your dreams.
You can think about me, Bubba. But all of this has some purpose, to your point, Kenzie. I do think we'll see something else in part 2 of Fire and Blood. The whole Ashai thing stands out to me. The Krakens too, although that could be just scared sailors seeing what they see. Well, we know that it's possible, especially in this world. My main takeaway is that ship ported in Ashai, and is it possible that Alyssa Farman is Quaith? And that's really reaching, but I don't know. What do you think, AU?
I don't think so. But I do want to know what, other than the Targaryen connection, what you think the reason for that would be.
Well, we get the story of the sea snake later, but I think it may hearken into what Arya wants to do. If she is to get okay, she has 3 options, pretty much. If it goes kind of like the show, she's gonna leave the House of Black and White, and she has talked about going what's west of Westeros. She loves Nymeria, who sailed to Dorne from the Royne, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's possible that Arya could end up sailing off somewhere to get away from the House in Black and White, because I feel like she's going to have a choice. She's either going to have to serve the House in Black and White or die as Arya Stark of Winterfell. But, that's just my opinion. What else could it connect to? I'd have to think. But there may be some other connection, because it's like 5 or 6 pages, and it has to be important for some reason.
Do you think it's because it's the only character that we get confirmation that was at Ashai, or as much of a conversation or connection as you can make with an inference? I mean, it could have been another ship. So it's hard to say what his influence was in saying that it was there, but
It doesn't seem that there was any point in saying it was there, unless he was going to try to take the route she did himself. But no one is really, I mean, after Eustace came back, no one wanted to do it. All they found was the 2 rocky outcrops. And she was Rhaella Targaryen's favorite, one of her favorites throughout her life, kind of a paramour in a sense. She married her brother. So, and I swear her brother they were best friends, and I think her brother did it for his sister. And then you see how it got sour at Dragonstone. He ended up poisoning all of her friends, and flew to his death. But that's a sad ending. I think because that's her. I feel like she would have. I don't know. It's getting lost in my own thoughts here. There has to be another. If she is Quaith, we're gonna have to have another aha moment in Fire and Blood too. That's what I mean, because it's not. not able to put it together quite yet. Now we can trace the dragon's eggs and possibly Illyrio's wife's heritage, but that's another story. And what's up, PMDB Entertainment? How's it going, man? And the Prince That Wasn't Promised. Welcome, you guys.
Yeah, it's kind of because the dates are still sort of obscure with a character like Kuwait. It's kind of hard to figure out exactly if she could be this character, what that also means, because they kind of not necessarily like dropped it, but she's like not really as influential in the books, if my mind is correct. Like after Dany leaves Essos, so it's like would have been it's kind of cool, but I don't know exactly. Plus, we also know that Mel is a very old character, like 300 and something years old, based off of show knowledge, or 400 and something based off of show knowledge. So who knows? Something that may pop up is old, a young version of Melisandre or something because of this character.
I think we need to do a stream on Ashai because it's there's little hints about it everywhere. It's so mysterious. I think there's going to be a bombshell drop with that later. But hey, you, did you say what you thought about it? What you think the significance of any of that would be?
Well, the significance would be one, like we talked about from the very beginning. What's the point of view slant, and why is he saying that? And then the other thing is, if it does, it gives you an age of how old Quaithe is and how long she's been studying. So we can kind of get a little bit of information from that, if that's the case. I'm not sold on it, but it's, sometimes a banana is just a banana. And George usually doesn't work that way, but it does happen. So you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to welcome Andy Burnett to the chat. Yeah, thinking the same thing I am for the most part. One of the things it could be, I think it's there to give us the hope that there's a route around the world. So if Arya sails west, we have hope she would make it. True. I mean, it gives an opportunity for her to sail off into the sunset sea, which would be something I think George would do. It's very poetic. We can, we get into this point where we have Jaehaerys makes the King's Road, which is a huge deal. You can, on his tomb, it says he united the kingdoms into one, and you can say he really did that. A lot of things came to pass with him. Now, was this solely his idea? I don't know, but it seems so. Flying over King's Landing, and there weren't any roads up until this point. That I find that insane when you think about it. But also, King's Landing wasn't as big as we think it is at this point. So
You think it's because there was so much travel by boat and not by land because it was so difficult to get through? Or do you think it was because once Aegon came, he was able to get an aerial perspective and it was easier to plow through the easiest route?
Yeah, I think it was long overdue. I'm sure someone else would have thought of it, but the turmoil of the reign from Aenys to Maegor was so hectic that there really wasn't time to think of that. I think, yeah, just very seemingly uncivilized. But I think it's akin to the Roman roads of old as well. Like, I don't know. What do you think, Kenzie?
Yeah, the development, I guess, of the King's Road. I guess because it couldn't. I guess maybe George A didn't want to give everything to Aegon the Conqueror in terms of what he established. It's also plausible that because of how far we're in the story, that development was just something that came next, because based on our own history, they didn't just, the first person who landed didn't just start building all the roads. It took like a long time to develop and to cultivate that sort of thing, and probably because of just the development of society and getting people to travel to different places at different times was obviously harder, but it gives these characters leading into the characters of the current storyline a way to explore other parts of Westeros and make the, I guess you could say, intercontinental trading a lot easier in a sense. But also too, we have to remember that Alysanne always used to fly. Flew a couple times north, so instead of always just taking Silverwing, she could have taken a royal procession almost, and that sort of weird, not necessarily like alluding to the fact that she potentially had other relationships like that, but it's just, I think, more of developing the society, and it was just Jaehaerys that was responsible for it almost, more or less.
Yeah, and with the building of the roads, Jaehaerys almost can enforce more power this way as well. It's easier to get armies back and forth if you have a road. I don't think it was just as simple as we need roads. People can't travel well. I think that might be slightly embellished. Yeah, that's a good point. What do you think about the King's Road, AU?
Well, how else is Rod's going to get to King's Landing? That's what I would. No, seriously. One of the things that we don't think about is how limited each kingdom had to be with growing their own produce and trading. I mean, we have probably more trading with Bravos and Yunkai and things like that than we do with the kingdoms within Westeros. So I don't see anybody going out of their way to trade with the Ironborn or an enemy. If you're in the Stormlands or you're in the Crown Lands, why are you intertrading? And we saw a little bit of that in the show when Stannis went to the Iron Bank. It's like, what are you going to grow on Dragonstone? There's nothing there. So
that's a great point. You see that in this chapter too with Rhaego Draws, and they do a lot of communicating with the Archon of Tyrosh, with the Bravosi Bank. That's a good point, AU. Just want to show real quick. I got some sweet sleep. I've got some widow's blood. Boop. I've got something that's really dangerous. It might be illegal for Bobby to have sent it. Bobby, you're awesome. Get stuff from Bobby. Someone put her link in the chat, please. The Strangler. Yeah. And it's the purple crystals. So I've got the Tears of Leaf. Yeah. So I'm ready to, mess up a Joffrey. Kill me an Aaron. Something like that. Bobby, you are just too awesome. Thank you so much. With Rhaego Draws too, that was a big deal. How he got murdered, the 12 people basically stabbing him. They cut his ring fingers off to get his jewels, and this happened during the Shivers, when everyone, all the common people, were in an uproar. Fear ruled King's Landing at this point, and well, Rhaego Draws did not want to be in the Red Keep, so he stayed in, what was it? Is it the street? What street is it with the prostitutes? Does anybody remember? I can't remember the street, but that's where he chose to stay so he could have his concubines and not be looked upon or frowned upon from the court. this was really brutal. This made Jaehaerys have to get another master of coin, and he got the Tyrell. I think it's Martin Tyrell, and Lord Redwine. I can't remember his first name right now. His son's Ryam. He said the Tyrells are dolts, and but his wife was a Fossaway girl, Martin Tyrell, and she was called the Apple Counter, and she did about as good as Rhaego Draws did. And this is the realm pretty much prospered under these people. Uh, what do you think about this whole interchangeable thing? How the Master of Coin worked, and just his death. I'll go with AU. I just rant for a while. Hope y'all like it.
I'll let Mackenzie go first on this one.
What was the question again for a second?
Was no question, just talking about Red.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, because I was trying to link Bobby's thing on Facebook, but it wasn't letting me do it for some reason. But the whole thing of, because this is all before the shivers are mentioned, so it's just to show, I guess, kind of I guess not necessarily the status, but yeah, I guess the status of what is going on at the time in King's Landing, especially with with more or less the small folk and all of that, because of what happens when we learn about the shivers and what they kind of are. So it's kind of cool. The fact that that storyline is kind of mentioned is kind of funny, because it kind of has some quips in a relatively serious chapter. So it's kind of just a cool, not cool, but it's like just that we get some odd moments, but they're good moments with stuff like that. I'm sorry, I can't really remember what you're talking about.
Oh, it's okay. The Lord of Air. I thought it was hilarious, and they see this Pentoshi that's rich, flaunting his wealth, and you almost can't blame him. But Jaehaerys gets so pissed off, and the daughter of one of the men ended up telling on him, and if I'm not mistaken, yeah, Jaehaerys had them all killed. I can't remember exactly the fashion, but he went down there in a rage. It's kind of the same spot, I think, where Visera died as well, on the horseback, where she crashed and broke her neck. And the fate of all, they had so many children, and we were talking about last week how maybe a life has to be given for a dragon to be hatched. So many lives taken, but they're not really telling us what's being hatched at the time, so it's hard to put them together.
I think this is George's way of just showing how vulnerable the Targaryens were versus, any other family would have gone through the same kind of tragedies. So he's just showing us that they're as vulnerable as anybody else.
With that, the doctrine of exceptionalism was questioned after Daenerys' death. The blood of the dragon isn't supposed to get sick. The blood is supposed to burn the impurities away, it says. And this kind of harkens back to Arya and whether or not those are fireworms in her. It's hard to say. Any thoughts, Kenzie? That's a good point. AU.
Yeah, when because it's Daenerys, not Daenerys, the Daenerys we know, but this Daenerys, and how pretty much this is when they really start talking about the shivers and how what the shivers are, and that everybody pretty much was afflicted with the shivers. I think it said one in every 5 people was never really truly got better or something. It was like some weird thing that they talked about, like how it was like 1 in 5.
1 in 5 recovered, I think.
Yeah, that's what it was. And for the fact that it reached the Red Keep and even into the royal family, being Daenerys, who was a child who was born after her older brother, was it Aegon, or one that we talked about in the last chapter, had died. And when she goes and she wakes up her mother in the middle of the night and says, "Mommy, I'm cold," or what we would think is like, "Mommy, I'm not feeling well," and to know that like a day and a half later, as it's written, that she dies, and it's very sudden, it hits Alysanne very hard. The fact that she loses her eldest daughter, and it's one of those things that as you read the chapter later on, she never well and truly recovers from that, especially after having all the other children that she does. And I think it was written in the chapter that it's having lost a child to the shivers is what they feel like really connected them to the people, because they're able to completely empathize with not only just losing just a child, but losing to a child in the same degree as the small folk and other lords and such.
Yeah, and she was the darling of the court. Everyone doted upon her, lords and ladies alike, not just her parents. So that's a good point. She had a lot of struggles with that, losing children. What were your thoughts on some of the children AU and even some of the loss of children that took a toll on their marriage? Um, we can get into Sarah Targaryen, the probably one of the worst daughters I've read about. uh, we have Vagon, who is just a real sourpuss, and many others. You have Daemon, you have Aegon. Go ahead.
No, I just think this is George's way of writing into not only are we getting a huge window into the Targaryen family, but some of the struggles that they went through, just like every other family does. But this is specifically George trying to do that, and that's one of the reasons why I have no problem believing Wins is done. Just because you get so much depth into the story, um, especially this chapter. I mean, there's an awful lot of information here, and you don't ever expect it to be when you got this book. You were thinking, "Oh, I'm just going to get a family tree or something like that." But with him, he just gives you so much information. It's just a little overwhelming, to be honest with you. To believe that he was able to get through this since we got the World Book. And I mean, this book is what, 700 pages? It's not exactly small, 26 hours of recording, and you're getting a huge amount of information from every detail. It just proves my point that Wins is done, and he's already working on his TV show. That's the only way I could think of it.
I feel like he has Wins done. I think he has everything for Dream of Spring written. He just hasn't condensed it yet, which takes him forever. That's a good point at you. I agree with you on that. Let me show off a couple more things real quick. I got some Wolfsbane. There's still more stuff in here. Sweet sleep. Yes. Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, get some good sleep with this. And some shade of the evening, right? This is just glorious, Bobby. Yeah, we have some key marriages. Corlys, Valerian, and oh shoot. Is it Alyssa that married? It's Corlys and Alyssa, right? The sea snake and Alyssa.
I think so, because there was that discrepancy of one of them, I can't remember, one of the ladies got pregnant by the stinger or something, and then one of them didn't want to marry someone to have a bastard's child or someone else's child, or to raise someone else's child, sorry. So there was a lot of strategic marriages that were like because of certain things, and one, I can't remember her name. There's so many names in this chapter, but one had to marry another because she got to have, I guess, the better pick because she wasn't pregnant or something.
It was oh goodness. it was her Sarah's two best friends basically. I can't remember their names, but they played at kissing, and then they bet one another, and then Sarah ended up giving her maidenhood to all three people. All three took it. Boys are so silly. She started comparing herself to Magor and talking about taking multiple husbands. I mean, and I'm surprised Jaehaerys just didn't do more, but he basically disowned her at this point. Uh, and you're right, AU. They have just as many problems. I don't know why, they use not getting sick as as like armor, but they don't talk about how they always die in childbirth. Children are always dying, uh, and
Even the sibling rivalry between what is it, Dahlia and with the bees in the chamber pot. It's like, I mean, who thinks of that? I mean, George just puts that in the story as a way of showing, these are real kids with real anxiety issues, and things happen. So
yeah, she had the fool uh, try to get on the Iron Throne, and he had tremors and stuff, so he cut himself all up. That's how she got in trouble. The three men she were with, one was the Stigner. He was a Beesbury, uh, and the other two are inconsequential. But they were making him run around naked and trying to. They thought it would be funny to watch him have sex. These are some sick people here, uh, and they weren't hanging out in the good places.
No. Well, when you're children, you have like nothing sometimes better to do. I don't know. But yeah, with the loss of a lot of the children, because we do have like a lot of births and a lot of deaths in this chapter, named births and named deaths in this chapter too. It's kind of crazy to even remember how many children that they had, and I feel like because George originally only wanted to write about 2 pages on Jaehaerys and Alysanne, to have like 3 massive chapters on them is pretty cool. And I don't know why, but I feel like there's a reason why there's so much on them for like the main storyline or what could have been next. Like, is there a possible reason that they're putting these characters into place, like characters that we know in terms of the main storyline? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say. We know. I
do
mean,
you think
Rogar.
Andy's
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, do you see Andy's question?
Is it just me, or are Targs good rulers but awful parents? They always seem to let their kids run around and do whatever they want, and no real discipline. Very true. Uh, Sarah, and actually even Visera, would use this too. Visera would make dudes swim the Blackwater for a kiss. She made them do all kinds of crazy things, and they didn't care. I mean, honestly, it, Jaehaerys and Alysanne were overlooking Sarah the whole time. They thought she was in great company. She had friends. They had all the servants and people around them and the septas around them. They should be fine. And basically, one of the friends thought it was stupid. They said, she's the princess. They do what she says. And I guess it never really occurred to them. They have so much going on, but I don't think there's a lot of parenting going on there. You have a few, Daenerys followed around Alysanne forever, stuck to her leg, and then after that, was it Visera that was following around everywhere? Can't remember. Go ahead, Eddie.
I was just going to say it kind of goes into what we were talking about before. If they're really this bad of parents, how good of a leader can they be, or ruler? And that point of view, we can see that it's a little slanted. Even though they're telling us these stories, they're not telling us these stories about the parents. It's about the kids. So it kind of goes into the realism of what he's telling us in the point of view.
Yeah, that's very that's a very true point. I feel like their interbreeding definitely has something to do with their mindset. They tend to think differently than regular people, and we know that incest can cause problems in the DNA. So that's not beyond reason. I would say that, I guess some can be good rulers. We have Jaehaerys, but I feel like the Maesters lifted him up to bring the realm back after everything with Maegor and Aenys. I feel like it was a big propaganda tool. You had Septon Barth there. You have a lot of people that could influence this. And we lost AU.
Oh no.
Uh, oh no. There he goes. He's back. The Night King kicked him out. What's up, man?
My internet just went out, so sorry.
Mine does it all the time. It's all good, buddy. Where was that, Kenzie? Lost.
Jaehaerys and Alysanne, and how like something about how that the being of the good rulers, and how it's like pretty much writ the maesters and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, they lifted it up because you had Barth. You had people there. I think they were good rulers. But I do think after all of that, you had to have some prosperity, and it makes you wonder how much Barth had to do with Jaehaerys' decisions. He was acting like it was just Jaehaerys, but is that a ploy? It seems like Barth had a lot of power in the era of the king. He's the reason that Martin Tyrell was picked and the apple counter wife. So Barth gets his way a lot. I find it slightly suspicious. uh, we let's see. We have all these deaths. Alysanne, uh, she's barely making it through these pregnancies. Causes a rift in their marriage. And we have Aemon and Jocelyn get married as well. Daemon and Alyssa. They both Daemon and Aemon both get knighted. Aemon at 16, Daemon at 17. Daemon seems to completely go out of his way to get knighted, and then he mounts Vhagar, if I'm not mistaken, the great she dragon Vhagar, and goes all the way across. I can't remember, somewhere in the Reach where he goes to a tournament, and he leaves right after he gets knighted. He stays just as long as he needs to and takes off and goes immediately and mounts Vhagar. Uh, it seems to be something with the mindset that they're just think they are gods. I mean, it is instilled upon them when they're young as well too. So, let me see.
Yeah, the belief that they're gods, and probably because they did have all the wet nurses and such. As well as there was that whole thing with was it Daenerys when she was sick, or when she was much younger, or it might have been another of the daughters, but how she wanted to be nursed until she was like 4 years old or something like that, because of because it thought that it was the thing of aiding in avoiding sickness during those the really bad times, if I remember, which was like unheard of for the royal family. Was because at the time Alysanne was having so many other children. I can't remember which daughter it was though at this point, but one of them tried to revert back to being a baby in a sense, because they were sick. I remember.
Yeah, there was one that stayed on a wet nurse for till they were like 7 or 8. Little Robin Aaron action.
That is kind of strange. I mean, for anybody, but do you think that's his callback to Liza?
Ooh, I mean, I don't know. because how everything was perceived with Liza until you actually met her was she was this innocent person who was a victim, basically. And we know from how we're talking about this was written by maesters. We have to take everything with a grain of salt. That's a good point. Kenzie, what do you think?
Yeah, because we see elements of, I always bring this up, but we see elements of the characters that we already know so much about in, I guess, older/past characters. So I wouldn't be surprised that we pick up on this little point and it influences sort of what's happened before in the main storyline. It's just kind of funny though that it's that they kind of blanketed around. I think it was sickness or something. That it was just that it was like more of like a comfort thing because they weren't like all well. But I don't know. It's possible. I don't know if it's like a direct correlation. It's just I think it's more or less like a callback or a call forward in time, I guess.
Yeah, I just want to say hey to Claire Gray. She has a good question. I wonder what happened to the Targ prince who became a maester, the moody Severus snake kid. Yeah, like he sucked on a lemon. Yeah, that was Vagon, and he wasn't interested in anything except books. He was very humorless, but he was a decent kid. He was willing, just Jaehaerys told him that he was going to send him to the Citadel, and this is basically the kid's dream. He said, "I'm good, father." He basically has the personality of a wet blanket. I I do wonder what happened with him, and if we'll see him later. I know we saw him again at Alysanne's side in this chapter. He did come back to stay with her after she broke her hip. So that's a good question, Claire. What do you think, AU? Do you think the Targaryen that was sent to the Citadel, you think there's any connotation with that, foreshadowing, or what do you think
No, I think
become of him?
this is just George's way of writing into a connection with Aemon, where we know what Aemon is like, right? But we don't know. Like I said, this point of view is giving us a slant on other characters that may not be exactly the same, but they're similar. That's why they have the interest in the books. Rhaegar has the interest in the books. So there's some details in there that we're getting that exposes the point of view and why he's saying the things he is.
Yeah, that's a good point. What's up, Lady Dreamfire? How are you doing?
Hi, Laura.
Yeah, I don't know how much to play in. I have to agree with you on that one, AU, for this point in time. I don't have a retort. Kenzie, do you have a retort for that?
No, but I feel like there's like there's always a possibility with anything, especially with German his writing. Because wasn't he supposed to marry his sister, and then they were both like, heck no, because there was that whole thing of because they were trying to, I guess not clump, but like put the children of the similar age together almost, and that because can never remember her name, but
I think it's for Sarah. And Alyssa actually poured what was it? Arbor Gold over his head after he did that. He said that I'm not gonna marry a woman who can't even write or read. I can't remember what it was. It was hilarious.
The fact that they kind of just put like for Alysanne and Jaehaerys to kind of put their children almost into couples, like when they were small, is kind of interesting. But because they thought it was proven success because maybe because they were children that were raised together, not really a big age gap, that it may work, but ultimately it doesn't work. So imagine if he didn't go to the Citadel, like how maybe different his character arc would have been, even though we probably won't get a lot of information about that, but it's a odd thought to think about.
Yeah. That's a good point. I keep saying that. Start taking a shot if I say good point. I have to stop that. We'll get a little bit into what is known as the Third Dornish War, even though the actual Martells didn't take part. The second coming of the Vulture King and Boris Baratheon, Rogar's brother, are raising hell. I think it's in the Red Mountains, if I'm not mistaken. And, well, Rogar comes back with Jocelyn. I want to talk about that a little bit because Rogar's on his deathbed and he does not want to die. He's kind of redeems himself, even though Jaehaerys has already forgiven him. And he goes to basically kill his brother and the Vulture King, but Jaehaerys goes with him. And this is a really cool section of the book. We get a fight between Jaehaerys and Boris because Jaehaerys is not going to have... he basically stopped him and said, I'm not going to have you be called a kinslayer. And that was a really cool moment. Very honorable. But, Rogar did get to fight the Vulture King for what that was worth. It wasn't much of a fight. Yeah. Hey, what are your thoughts on the Third Dornish War?
Well, I think what I like about it is it kind of goes along the whole Blackfire Targaryen. We see a lot of interfamily conflict, right? But the Baratheons give us so much of the same thing where there's a lot of conflict going on. And this is a great example of that, where, they work together, but there's still issues, with their relationship. As far as the Dornish, I just love the way that the Dornish are able to outthink the Targaryens and the Baratheons most of the time. And they're usually one step ahead of them, and they're always called dolts, or people that are just primitive in their way that they're thinking. And it's not true. It's kind of like the way that most people think of the people in the North. They're just savages. And I really like the way that the Dornish are exposed to be usually smarter. And this wasn't exactly what you asked, but that's what I got out of it. Oh
no, that's a good harken back. I don't know if the Dornish are so interesting. We know that they feel like they had a role in it. People suspected that the Dornish kind of helped out, or at least let it happen. But it was just kind of an unsaid thing and was never really touched upon until later when we find out, I think it's Morion, who was the son of the Dornish Lord. The Dornish King, I can't remember the name of. We have the Fourth Dornish War, which was the Battle of the War of 1,000 Candles, if I'm not mistaken. And it only lasted a day. Everything was burned down. They tried to do stuff behind the back of Targaryens by hiring cells from Mir and Pentos, I think. Anyways, word got to them, and they were just waiting on them with the dragons. Go ahead, kids. I don't know. I'm just rambling about the chapter at this point.
Yeah, there's so much in the chapter. It's hard to kind of figure out what are the good things to bring up. But yeah, it's so much. The dragons were a thing too for when Daenerys had died. How they wanted to, while she was, I guess, you could say, in the process of dying when she was very sick, how Jaehaerys had sent for a hatchling to be brought to her bed from to go to Dragonstone, and then pretty much minutes after she's dead, he flies to Dragonstone and says, "Nope, we don't need the hatchling anymore because she has now died." So.
Hey, would that have made any difference if the hatchling was there or not? If she would have had a dragon close to her
No.
that she bonded with?
Yeah, I think it would have just added to the story, but I don't think it would have made a difference in the end.
Yeah, I think it was a last desperate act of a father just willing to want to do anything to save his daughter. Such a sad ending to this chapter.
Because we get a lot of sort of deaths in this chapter, and it's very sad because when they do talk about when she is burnt, that it's a thing that, because they always talk about how a parent should never have to burn their child, or a mother should never have to burn her child. Cough, cough, Salice. But there's, yeah, it's talking about a lot of dead little children in this chapter. And it's hard to believe that there's only a few of them out of how many that they had that survived. And I can for sure see that it put a lot of strain on their marriage. But Alysanne talks about her marriage to Jaehaerys pretty much not dotingly, but like happily until she ends up. It's noted that she dies at the end of this chapter at 64, I think it is.
In 100 AC, exactly 100 years after the conquest.
Which is interesting because that's when Leaf is born. And I'm wondering if there's a connection between the declining of magic, or because of the dragons, and this being one of the the first stages.
I guess the development of the children of the forest after the somewhat depletion of the Valyrian magic.
Yeah, I also feel like there are pockets of magic at one time that are like peaks and valleys. But if you go into the whole red comet thing, I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know if I subscribe to magic as peaking again. I do subscribe to magic as stronger when dragons are present, period. But I don't know that necessarily dragons existing make magic stronger. But Pyat Pri says so once they were born, didn't he get stronger? So, but he is in the vicinity, so I don't know what the radius would be.
It was also that the dragon's magic is most strong when they're in the presence of Dany, or someone of Targaryen blood, more specifically Dany. So it could be a thing that if we don't have either Jon or whatever child survives, then there may be a good thing that where we see, if we do get a flash forward, the depletion maybe of Dany's dragons, unless they all don't die, or they get weakened if they all don't die in the 2 or 3 potential battles that we get. And who knows? Maybe the Night King also has Valyrian blood, because that's why he gets to bond with the undead Viserion over. Or there's that whole thing where it could be basically a version of Jon, Valyrian and Andal First Men combination. That's maybe why there's something in there.
Okay, we have some good questions in the chat, and you made me think of some stuff too. So, but Riso and Andy Burnett both have good questions. Do the others get stronger when magic/dragons are back? I would argue if they did, they would have. I feel like if they did and that was a tool to use, I'll let everyone else debate me on this, but that they would have already invaded. I think there's another external factor, but it it seems as if it would at least amp their magic. It seems to amp everyone else's magic. Now the only thing is, if it's ice magic, would fire magic dampen it or make it stronger? I would go with dampen it, but I can't tell you for sure. That's hard to say. Someone
Because
tackle.
that whole in the last chapter with Alysanne and Silverwing going over the wall. Like Silverwing didn't want to go over the wall when Alysanne was at Castle Black. So there's something with the dragons and the magic, and the whites or the others. Maybe it needs to be a dead dragon that goes beyond the wall. Or there's something, because even before Dany's dragons are hatched at the end of Game of Thrones, the whites are active beyond the wall, especially in the prologue. So I don't know, maybe it's like Johnny says, they get stronger with that type of magic involved. But I don't know, like the discrepancy of Alysanne not being able to go beyond the wall, and then there's the whole thing with Dany being able to go beyond the wall with the dragons. It's weird.
We gotta separate the show because I'm pretty sure
definitely.
Dany isn't flying.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like, if that's going to be what happens, or if something happens like that, where they mix,
yeah. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I'm just saying where like they mix that whole thing up, where it's like they don't talk about how she can go beyond the wall or whatever.
It's a weird thought too, because the Knight Who Smoked the Laughing Tree said something last week about, was the wall also put up to keep dragons out at some point? We don't know how many wild dragons or what dragon riders were there, but it could work both ways, and maybe they unknowingly keep dragons out. Yeah, what are your thoughts on the others getting stronger or weaker when the dragons are back or in their vicinity? AU?
I'm sorry. I don't think the dragons have anything to do with the others. I think the others are empowered, if you will, by a totally different influence.
I would agree. I feel like the heart of what magic is in dragons. I think the epicenter is Valyria, where the Doom was. And I feel like the epicenter for whatever the other's magic is tied to the Weirwoods, right?
Well, keep in mind what I mentioned before about Leaf being born 100 AC. And she's the one that created the one at the tree, the quote unquote Night King. That couldn't have happened 8,000 years ago if she was born at 100 AC. So what they're telling you in the show is a lie in regards to that being the Night King that we see. It's basically, what are we talking, 150 years or so from the time Leaf was born until now? No, it's more than that. But the point I'm making is it's been started a long time ago. So it has nothing to do with the dragons, because the dragons diminished since she was born.
In the books, too, we do have a big problem. There doesn't seem to be an actual leader of the others as well. They just seem to be a people, but you would have to suspect that there
we have
is a
the
leader.
Great Other. So I would definitely disagree with that in theory, but we
Isn't
haven't
that only
seen,
mentioned once by Male, the Great Other, in the book?
Doesn't matter. Honestly, I think the whole the old gods and the Great Other are all basically saying that there is a leader of the others.
You would think there would have to be. at some point, unless they're going. I don't. George does like the hive mind thing. I just don't know if that's what I get from the others in the book right now, but it's hard to say. I know they went with it in the show. Getting off track here. But I got another question relating to the dragons. Are the dragons magic? And it's kind of related. Or do they bring magic? And I would say they're magical beings. Uh, maybe closer to something akin to Barrack. Or I don't know that they're dead, but I'd say they're magical beings that probably thrive when magic is strongest. But then, the magic of the wall stopped. Silverwings, I'm not sure with that. So that's all. What do you think?
Conflicting magic, I guess. Because then it also comes into question what was the quote unquote magic the Brian the Builder used to build the wall. Was he some sort of magic person? And was there magical things around / alive when the wall was being built to warrant? Or there's the whole thing of does he know / foresee about the dragons? Like this is like this could be a whole thing on its own almost about knowing about the dragons and knowing about the wall and how it's constructed and all that stuff. It calls into question a few things.
Yeah.
I think it's a circular question, but you got to remember that that dragons are fire made flesh. So, in that respect, obviously, that's a magical thing. No more than shadow babies, but yeah, it's definitely a magical part of the story, which I love because George doesn't want it to be a god versus a god, but he doesn't have any problem making it, dragons and dire wolves. You know what I mean? So I'm all for the dragons being magical, but one bringing the other versus the other way around. I think it's just an argument of circular proportion.
And Andy Burnett, to your point about how the wall would keep a dragon out, I would just say it's some kind of magical block that blocks any magic. Not, that's probably what it is. I'm sure it's a ward of sorts. Let's see. All right, let me go on to a little bit more here. We have let's see.
Can I just
yeah, go ahead.
answer the Prince that was promised question in regards to the leaf? If you saw a character that was a Children of the Forest in the show, I don't think you would confuse one versus the other. And so the fact that they used leaf was the most important part of the whole process, because what Bran saw in the dream was leaf. He identifies with leaf, and the fact that she did it shows you the timeline that they're staying in. If they didn't want it to be leaf, it could have easily been one of the girls in the background that they used. It didn't have to be leaf. But it's a good question. I like the fact that you brought that up.
Yeah. I'm going to butcher this name. The Hegi Hund? Do you think the Five Forts have a similar magical barrier? I would think so. Don't the Five Forts have the Oily Stone too? AU?
Yes.
I think that may have something to do with it. You have that at the High Tower.
Sure.
And that's around where the last long night stopped. It's kind of close to the High Tower, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, there seems to be strongholds. This can't be the first time this has happened. There's probably been long nights throughout history. But if we're going off the show, they made them as a weapon. Do you think that's a good question, AU? Do you think they're doing that in the books as well? Are these a weapon made by the children, or are the others just a different species altogether?
I don't think they're any different than the ones that invaded Essos before in the last long night, or in Westeros in the previous. They came from the lands of Always Winter. Just want to say hi to Chrissy of Old Stones. Can't help myself. Sorry, guys. But yeah, I don't think they're any different. And I think it's a cyclical pattern. I don't think it's every 8,000 years. I think it happened much more frequent, and definitely see the similarities between the children of the forest and the ones from all the other areas of Planetos.
Planet Gray says, long night every 1,000 years. And no, you never have to apologize for saying hello to Chrissy. I guess we'll jump back to the book. Let me make sure there's no questions there. Okay, so yeah, the timeline I think is going to be completely different in the books. And we have, to your point earlier, how involved they get with the free cities. King's Landing, Jaehaerys. They're invaded Tarth, right? The free cities are sitting on Tarth. Aemon goes out and basically gets killed when is it a Pentoshi they were aiming for? Anyways, Aemon accidentally got hit in the neck, and this is one of the things that sows the seeds of the Dance of Dragons, along with many other things, and it's very tragic. I feel like, yeah, to your point again, AU, they keep trying to show us how fallible the Targaryens are and how easily they can die like any other man. But that whole thing's gut wrenching because that basically is what brings down everyone's spirits. And this happens after Daenerys dies. And this pretty much crushes Alysanne. And then you also have Balon avenging with Dark Sister and the line. I killed 1,000 of them, but it won't bring him back. It's just that kills me when I read it every time. Kenzie, your thoughts on that? And if you have anything else you want to bring up, I just wanted to talk about that for a second. But if you got any thoughts on it,
the death of another child for Alysanne really does secure this whole thing of her breaking down as an older woman. She's having all of these children, but they're not surviving either child. Like, they either die a few days after, or they're born, or it's months into their life and they end up dying. And it's disheartening for her. She's going through these stages of having all of these children, but then the ones that die, she can't, not necessarily, this is the wrong word, but like replenish the amount of children that she's, because every time she has a new one, it seems like one of her eldest children just dies, and then one of the younger children also dies at the same time. So it's very hard on her body. One of the last children that she does have, when she's much older, might I add, when she was like 44 years old or 42 years old, like talked about in the last chapter, like she thought that this could be something that would connect her almost to Alyssa, and it's not, obviously, but that the fact that she thinks that she could have this child and that it could probably bring joy to her life, and it end up taking her away and like getting her really sick, and the child's really sick, it breaks her, because it's part of the last paragraphs of the chapter where she talks about all the children that she's had and all the ones that she's lost, and probably I think it also mentions like what life would have been like if her 3 sons that she had survived and all of that, because what happens in this chapter really does set up Dance with Dragons, and if these children, more specifically these sons, had survived, how different maybe Dance would have happened. Would have it happened later than it died? I don't know, but it's a thought to talk about almost.
Yeah, hey, they had so many kids. I think it was almost inevitable. How many coins did they flip at you?
Yeah, it is amazing how successful the intermarriages are. Um, I find that pretty stunning, to be honest with you. I don't know whether it's because of that or not because of that.
I feel like it may even go back to the blood because it seems like they're not as fertile with someone who doesn't have Valyrian stock. You know, you got the Baratheons who seem to mingle well. You have the Valerians, and another lesser house that I can't think of. But when they tend to marry other people, they usually die in childbirth. The child doesn't come out right. Uh, that's a
Just
really
like
good point.
Dany and Drogo.
Yeah. You know, and maybe that's why you're supposed to keep the bloodlines pure, but possibly something was lost in translation, and you're supposed to marry Valyrian blood and not your brother and sister. And I think they got a little fervent and scared with it after the Doom of Valyria, thinking their
Right.
whole race was going to die out. Oh, go ahead, AU. Say whatever you want. Talk. No.
And he runs.
Go ahead, cause
Yeah, and then almost at that point, then is John an anomaly? If it always ends in this weird thing with
no, his mother died, so he gets to live. That's the little caveat. Oh, go ahead.
like health issues or whatever, like that weird caveat thing. But like how if it because it was because isn't it like addressed? It's like with if they're not of the same bloodline, then it's like either they're born too early or such and such. Because there is that weird sort of discrepancy about sometimes I think it's in the books about when John is born and all that stuff. Even though the show's confirmed it's during the rebellion, there's a weird timeline of like who, especially for Boboski and the RLJ thing about like who is the older son, the son of like Ned or whatever. So it's I don't know. No, I'm just rambling here.
Well, what do you think? Are you? And are there any thoughts you would like to bring up? Anything you would like to ask me personally? You know, get deep.
Oh wow, I wasn't prepared for that. Yes, I do. I do. No, but seriously, I think the connection between the intermarriages, I think, is a pretty important thing to go over, especially when you consider the origins of the family, because they weren't really that big of a family in the Valyrian freehold. So the fact that they, should stay intermarried is important. But I think more important, going back to Mackenzie's original point, which was this is what sets up the dance. So many things could have happened if even one of the sons would have stayed alive, that we wouldn't have had as interesting of a story.
Yeah, I agree. It really does set up everything, and I don't. All this death has to happen for a reason to set it up, and I like how it's beautifully done by George. I honestly love this book. Uh, and there are all these little seeds here. I'm trying to think of the exact ones. You know, the marriage of the sea snake and Rhaenys. You have Alyssa, and you know, we'll call into question what's going on with her later. You had Jocelyn dying in childbirth. She's half Targaryen basically herself, and was that an issue? Uh, she was great. She beat the hell out of it wasn't Vagon, but the other one that poured the one she poured the Arbor Gold over. She beat the hell out of him in a training yard. It was funny, but it it does harken back to if these people would have lived, we would probably not even have a Song of Ice and Fire right now. I think the Dance of Dragons sowed the seeds for everything to come, and without it, I don't believe we would have the story anything close to what we have today.
It would have been a much more boring story without the Targaryens if the Long Night happened again in Westeros, for example.
Yeah, it really would. It really would. You got to have a little fire and blood up in there.
What did you
Kenzie,
think of? What did you think? I want to ask both of you in regards to the question. What did you think about all of the names? I mean, as far as the creation of the names, and then you have Alyssa, which is like so common. I thought that was kind of a strange thing.
Well, I mean, you get a John thrown in there every now and then. But as far, yeah, the Targaryens, with Alyssa being, maybe it's a mark of her being different. As we see, she has a strong will. She's taking her babies up on melees, flying them around. Not long, maybe a year. What is it? 3 years old, I think they're taking them up flying. She is a very willful soul, and I think the common name is the opposite of her personality. I think it's a little bit of a play on words for George. I didn't even catch that, but and now that I think about it, it is a common name, and I think it's more of an ironic undertone that George was using there, because it's a pretty uncommon person in Alyssa Targaryen. Um, Kenzie, what do you think about that?
Yeah, speaking of like the whole thing about how they have like the Daenerys, the Aegon, and all this stuff, and how it's very repetitive. Like you almost have to keep track and which person had a child named like XYZ, like Aegon. How many Aegons are up to now? 6, 7, at this point, like in terms of the main story. Also, because they are a magical family and they're from across the narrow sea, so you'd expect them to have different names than, say, like John Smith, like Robert, like all the names that we would normally know and probably would be more seen in Westeros. But yeah, like a name like Alyssa is a total outlier. And if I looked it up properly, so there's like the the characteristics of a person named Alyssa are free-loving, adventurous, adaptable, intelligent, easygoing, progressive, but is also sensual. So there could be something in like the fact of George looking at names and looking into the meanings of names and what they mean and kind of putting them on these characters and developing the character and then attaching a name that kind of suits it, and or we're just overanalyzing George just picking a different name for a legacy character. What?
I just thought of something. No, you can keep going. I just got an aha moment thinking about something.
No, I was just saying that it just could be a thing of just to have someone completely different to stand out against all of the Dannys, Aegons, Aemons, Rhaenys, Viserys, Visenya, like all of these like names. And I think George has actually spoken about when he names his characters and all that. So who knows? But go ahead with your aha moment.
Well, it was, I guess, about Valerian dying in Dragon Pit. He's locked up because Arya took him, and Arya took him to Valyria, and all this shit happened. So, um, Jaehaerys had him all locked up. I'm wondering if Valerian died from old age or because he was enclosed, because Balerion, when he come back with Arya, he had a 9-foot gash on his side, and also had scars from something else. It begs the question whether he fought a bigger dragon, and I can't think of what else would be out there. Um, what do you
A
what do you
kraken.
think about that, AU? Yeah, Kraken. That is possible. Um, we do notice a lot. It keeps make something. George does make a point of this: is how many times the dragons have to stop. They can't stay airborne forever. Is a big point, and they make this point a few times in each of the chapters. Like when Alysanne was trying to go straight to the Erie to, I think Visera was pregnant, and she ends up dying later, but she was scared. She has to stop 2 or 3 times, and I know she didn't want to stop because she just was hanging out. So uh, I think that may have connotations later, but I haven't pieced it together yet. Um, yeah, but yeah, with Balerion's death, what do you think about that, AU or Kenzie, whichever one of y'all unmute first? What's up, Ben? How's it going, buddy? Jordy, what's up, Jordy? Terry
You're
T.
muted, Mackenzie.
Oh, she over there talking?
No, I said I already talked too much, but it's a possibility that something like that had happened. Yeah, because it's kind of hard to think about like how old Balerion would be, and because as the dragons get older, their skin's supposed to get more impenetrable. So this must have been something very large, or something that had happened, or something drastic should have happened to Valerian then, because depending on how old the dragon is, it's suspicious, because
I want to
like
say Balerion was almost 200, somewhere in there. Can't give you an exact number.
yeah, so you'd think by that point the skin or the scales would be more or less toughened into as a fully adult dragon, but I don't know. Maybe dragons need to be 500 years old to be considered adults. But yeah.
And we don't know what really is in Sathoros, right? There really aren't tales of dragons, but not many people have talked about it or come back from there. That's another thing. AU, would you like to get bit by a fly in Sathoros?
I don't want to get bit by a fly anywhere in this place. It's pretty bad. You never know what you're going to come home with. It's pretty weird. I kid and say a kraken, but that's something we haven't seen, and it's definitely something that they have been known to catch fish, out of the ocean, throw them in the air, and burn them to eat. So it's very possible he could have tried and not realized, I'm messing with the wrong thing.
Yeah, because we know that once he stopped wherever the hell
Special
he was
hello
going.
to Lauren too. Sorry to interrupt you there, Johnny, but wanted to say hi to Lauren.
Oh, I was about to get her. No, Lauren and Almighty Coon, what's up? I was thinking about something that I can't remember. No, Balerion would go about and leave Arya to her devices while he was hunting and resting, just like we saw with Dany. Then you have the thing I think was really key from the Sathoros thing is the water. Don't drink the water. There are worms in it that will kill you. And this possibly could be. No, I'm not saying you got. I'm not saying you got it from water, but this lends more credence to Arya getting a parasite uh, in Valyria, and that's a loose term for it. You could call it a magical parasite. But I think that Valerion's death was sad, just like Claire Gray said. He just wanted to go home, but had to bring that brat back to the Red Keep. Go ahead, Kenzie.
Yeah, poor. Yeah, it's really sad that one of the dragons also dies in this chapter. Like it's you could say it's a slight emotional roller coaster in terms of a chapter with what happens in it. Uh, yeah, it's. But I feel like the fact that we lost a dragon, like a predominant dragon in this, is kind of a whoa. So like they're not 100% indestructible all the time. And also the mention of the dragon pit and what we know now about the dragon pit. Um, it's interesting to think.
Yeah, we see that dragons are fallible, and how magical really are they if they just live and die like normal beasts. But we will kind of get wrapped up here and give our final thoughts on this chapter and maybe anything else you or AU want to ask me. And if anyone in the chat has any questions about Jaehaerys, Alysanne, or the 500 children they had, let us know. Let me know what your favorite dragon is in the chat, if you have one. Moondancer's a good one. AU, what are your thoughts, my friend? And do you have any other questions?
Well, Smaug is my favorite dragon, but that's a different story. So just the fact that they are able to continue the relationship between the dragons is phenomenal to me, because when you think of an animal that big and how much they would have to eat, the logistics of it, if you've taken care of horses or cows, or large farm animals, they're very time intensive. So it's kind of cool. But this was a very different chapter than what I expected. So I apologize for not giving you as much information as I normally do. But I definitely want to say that it definitely adds to the element of complication to the story. And this book is not something that you're just getting A Song of Ice and Fire information from. It's very, very in depth. So I'll always say that the books are done and George is just waiting for the show to be over before he releases it. So you guys, thanks for having me on, Johnny. I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. You got anything coming up?
I'm still working on my Origins of Winterfell, and that's one of the things that Lauren helped me with, and Claire has helped me with, Kraken has helped me with, and I'm like literally on the edge of releasing it. So, yeah, you're gonna love that. It'll answer all the questions as far as why there must always be a Stark in Winterfell, why the White Walkers are coming. It answers a million questions. So, and I haven't heard anybody say this information before. So,
Oh, that's got me excited. I'm sure y'all have something good up your sleeves. You just mentioned some very brilliant people, ones that I cannot compete with. I only hope to catch their scrappings. AU, maybe you can have me on your channel and get me back like I got you today. A little payback may be necessary.
No payback at all. I'd love to have you and Mackenzie both on my channel anytime. Yeah, it's always fun.
But I honestly appreciate it. It is a pleasure to have you on, and hopefully have you on more often if you're available, because I will be pestering you. Mackenzie, what do you have going on, and your final thoughts on this chapter?
It's
I ended in a weird way right there. Sorry.
no. This chapter is a really good one. Sorry for the background noise. It's a really good chapter. We lose Alysanne in this chapter, so now it's Jaehaerys' reign without Alysanne for I believe the next chapter, which will be interesting to look at. And yeah, it's because it's the end of that sort of era with the Targaryens. It's the king without his queen, and how he navigates that with all of his kids, setting up the Dance of Dragons. But yeah, it's really good. It was a really nice chapter to go through, and Very happy to be on as always. Coming up for me, tomorrow maybe sometime we should be doing podcast style of The Climb, Johnny and I at some point, hopefully. So Wednesday night for Episode Club, when we do the live stream, we do Bear and the Maiden Fair, and we may have somebody new join us for that one. And that's all I have besides the usual. I'm either on my channel, on Johnny's channel, or on Cylon John's.
That's right, Cylon, Johns, and Jill's. Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Also, the podcasts for Cylon Johns will be coming out tonight. I'll be uploading it after I get off of here. So check that out. It's going to be a breakdown of the episode by me and John St. Baptiste, along with teasers for the Jills and anyone watching. Remember, it's spoiler free, but it's a lot of fun. We have a great time on Fridays. Also, coming up this week, at some point, J.R. Raleigh from Geek Chat's going to be on my channel. Haven't got a specific topic yet, but that's going to happen. We got the Catlin stream coming up the week after next. Got that all figured out, so that's going to be fun. Saturday, Lauren's Corner is going to be here with us, and I believe John St. Baptiste, and we will be having Sasa back, and we'll be talking about the next chapter, which I'm going to give you the page numbers and tell you, I think, what number the chapter is, but we're only going to cover one chapter from here on out. There's a lot of information in each chapter. It's going to be Heirs of the Dragon, a Question of Succession, 339 to 391, and it's chapter 12. Really good chapter. Many and more children to come. I want to thank everyone for coming out. I want to especially thank my panel members who always support me and have my back, and everyone in the chat. Much love to y'all. You don't know how much I appreciate y'all being here and hanging out with me. I just want to say I love y'all, and we will see you soon on the next one, my friends.
Even the people that are lurking and not in the chat.
Yes, we see you. We see you.
We know you're there.
Yes. Let me give you an ASMR. Goodbye.
Definitely gotta say bye to Bubba Husky, who's asleep right now.
Goodbye, Bubba. We'll talk to you later.
Don't think about me when you're sleeping.